Half a day, Hamzu todos. Feliz Pascua, Noche Buena, buenas. Inano si Michael Luhan Bavakwa. Este un otro na episode Fenatso. Merry Christmas to everybody. My name is Michael Luhan Bavakwa, and this is a very special Pascua Noche Buena, Puengan Menagov Christmas Chamorro music themed episode of Fenatsu. And so instead of hearing from me or instead of hearing from somebody else, like is the usual format for these for episodes of Fenatsu, we're going to be hearing Chamorro music. Some of you may know, if you are a fan of Fenatsu, then you know that I love to collect Chamorro vinyl records. I don't have as many as I wish that I could. And there's still many records that I know exist and I still haven't seen or been able to collect. And so I'm always looking for more. And so over the years, though, I've been able to collect a handful of Chamorro Christmas vinyl records. Now, we should, if you're familiar with Chamorro music, you know that literally there are dozens, if not hundreds, of Chamorro Christmas albums out there. Almost everyone has Chamorro. Almost every musical artist or musical group that has been around for a long time has released Christmas albums, cassette tapes, or CDs. But the amount of Chamorro vinyl out there, vinyl records, is much more limited. Chamorro vinyl was made first in the 60s, the late 60s, by Johnny Sablan, and other artists released, such as the Chamoru Brothers, the Delgado Brothers, even some released singles, just two songs, one on each side. And so in the 70s, more and more come out. In the 80s, there's still some vinyl, but then, of course, tapes and CDs overtake that and eclipse Chamorro vinyl albums. And so there's not as much that has been out there, because at that time it was limited to less artists where it had the means or the support in order to record an album and to produce it and to get it out there. And so there's far less. Now, what I have is not all that exists. I know there's a bunch of Christmas Chamorro vinyl albums that I don't have, but I do have 4. And I'll be sharing with you from 3 of them today. And so the first one that I have here is Chamoru Christmas. Ooh, Chamoru Christmas by Johnny Sablan. It's a wonderful two-disc album. What's it called? And I mean the Imas Mangi na Patina Isan Metna, the sort of Santa Claus on the Carabao in the front. It's amazing. Johnny Sablan also released another one, which is Chamorro Songs and Carols. Another beautiful picture here of the cathedral and the Plaza de España. And then the Delgado Brothers also had an album, Feliz Pascua para Todos, which has some beautiful songs on it as well. I also have one Jimmy D Chamorro Christmas record, but I won't be sharing any songs from that, because that Christmas record, Jimmy D did record Chamorro Christmas music, but from that album, it's almost entirely covers of English Christmas songs. And so I don't have any vinyl from him in which he's covering Chamorro Christmas music. But I'm very excited to be sharing some of these songs with you today. Now, por favor, if you have any comments, if you have any memories associated with these songs, because one of the reasons why I'm digitizing the vinyl and I'm putting it on YouTube for people to listen to is because Paraguaho ti dumangkuludzo Católico. I'm not Catholic. I did not grow up Catholic. So a lot of the customs around Chamorro Christmas are Catholic in origin. And so a lot of these songs are not those that I sang growing up, but I did learn them when I attended the University of Guam and I started to learn Chamorro. And then when I started teaching Chamorro, I would teach Chamorro Christmas songs as well. And so, for me, a lot of this is new and different to me too, but I still enjoy it because it's Chamorro. It represents sort of the history, the culture, the language of the people. But what I have found, though, is especially, remember, the majority of Chamorros, Manyascagi Sanlago, are in the States. And what I found is, even for me, not growing up Catholic, I still knew that there was these songs that people sang. Fan Maktu Manhengi, the Chamorro version of O Come All Ye Faithful. There was that long, slow song, Si Jose and Si Maria. Of course, Dandani Panderetas, that's the exciting song, right? But what I found is that in my free Zoom Chamorro classes and talking to many Chamorros who live out in the States, these are families where they've never done a novena in their family, never done a novena at all, much less a novena in Chamorro. Never sort of their Chamorro Christmas experience is non-existent. They haven't heard these songs. They don't sing these songs. They don't know these songs. And I'm always astounded at that because, even for me, being around adjacent to Catholic Chamorro culture, you would hear these songs and have a sense of these songs. Even if I didn't know all the words or didn't understand everything, you would hear them. But what I found is that for so many Chamorros, especially those who live out in the States, this part of the culture, this part of the language isn't being connected to them. And so in Fanatsu, that's so much of what we do, is taking resources, taking things, and helping to facilitate the intergenerational transmission, whether it is of the language itself, helping to teach the language, helping to create spaces where those of you who are learning and you may not have any Chamorro speakers in your family, you can hear an interview, me interviewing somebody in Chamorro, or hear the Cuentos Guajan series with Senor Kin Concepcion, where he is talking for 15 minutes or 20 minutes about just a topic, and just speaking in Chamorro at length about that topic, whether it's rising crime on Guam, celebrating the Christmas spirit, honoring our elders, whatever it is, but just more chances to hear somebody speaking in Chamorro. And so, or if it's stories, right? Passing on the stories of Chamorros, because if you grew up in a space where the only sort of connection that you had to Chamorro history or culture was a Guam flag or a CNMI flag, Or like some people in the States, maybe the only thing connected to Guam was big wooden spoons and forks on the wall, because I know that that was a huge thing for Chamorros in the States for a long time. And so you didn't learn much about the legends or much about the history and the Chamorro people at all. And so Fanatsu is a space to pass on those stories, right? To help transmit them from one generation to the other, because for whatever reason in our families, it's not happening, it's not being passed on. So we create the possibilities for it to be passed on. And so that's what today is about. So for those of you who know the songs that we're going to listen to, share your memories, share your nostalgia, share what they mean to you. But if you don't know them, then I welcome you to this space where you can hear them and where you can see what other people, the connections that other people make to these songs. But before we get started, though, I do want to remind everybody that I was mentioning it last time. Oh, see this right here? Dispensadzo. See this shirt? Fanatsu shirt. Woohoo! So sign up to support Fanatsu on Patreon, and you can get this special shirt for half off. Fanatsu patrons only pay $10, and shipping is covered if you are signed up as a patron. For the regular community, you can get this shirt for $20. But this is a special shirt designed by my brother, Jack Lujan Bavacqua, who does all the artwork for the Guam bus. And so just message us, comment if you would like to order a shirt. It's a great gift for somebody who wants something a little bit different for Christmas or for New Year's and so on. All right. So as I have been doing for the past year, I have uploaded more than 100, and at this point it's 140 somewhat hard to find Chamorro songs from my vinyl collection onto YouTube. If you are not on the Fanatsu YouTube page, you can subscribe. And I'm in the middle of uploading the next 30 to it. I just uploaded 2 more songs last night. And so the more people that support Fanatsu on Patreon, the more people that sign up, the more songs that me and my son Akli'i that we digitize and then we upload. And so one of the nice things that we try to do is not just to put the song, but we also put the production information, the notes. So who wrote the notes for the song? So who wrote the song, where it was recorded, the year of the album, and other historical information about the song, and the musicians. And so we try to include that in the video. And so here we go. We're going to get started first with, let's do some Delgado Brothers. Let's do some Delgado Brothers. And so the Delgado Brothers released a number of vinyl albums. For example, they released Minatsum Atdao with the help of Laling Camacho, also Para Si Juan, great albums. And then, of course, Paz Para Todos, which is the album we're going to hear from today. And so a great, group, one of the few groups that was singing Chamorro music regularly at that time. And so it's, I feel so privileged that I was able to get a copy of their vinyl album. Some of their albums have been put out onto CD, where you can buy them, because I also have them on CD, but I feel so fortunate that I was able to get a copy of Paz Para Todos. And so here we go. Let's listen to this one from the Delgado Brothers. Some of you may know this. Sen Bonito O Maria.
matanya anakmu Nagwija ilahin Zeus Wahai pastor di langit katnya kini Lucia Lau mana abad ipaluza ake espia Habibi kisenju osing magigi panagongnya Zaman ini isi hamagubi sanalongnya Sen bonito oh Maria Ipadonmu a Jesus Di matanya anakmu Nagwija ilahin Zeus Nagwija ilahin
Lenya. Dispensato, Sidus Masi, for those in the comments for letting me know that I was muted. So the Delgado Brothers, Bonito na Canta now, very much, their style was very much one which was reminiscent of those such as my grandparents' generation who grew up before World War II, where their style of music was, that very much Hispanic sort of folk style. And so, but just, I love that sound. It definitely reminds me of sort of the older generations and the types of music that definitely would have appealed to them, that they would have loved to put on a Sunday, but when it's time to clean the house and the yard. Let's listen to another song from the Delgado Brothers, from their album, Paz para Todos. And so this one is another great one, Itzabilen. And so what I like about these albums, of course, is that it's, they include some of the songs which people are very familiar with, but they also include some that are not as common, and so many people know Fanmatu Menhengi. But what I have found is that for a lot of younger people, they don't know Itzabilen, at least not right away, although once they hear the song, then some of them may sort of remember it. And so let's listen to Itzabilen from the Delgado Brothers. All right, Nengon Ratu. Instigate.
Itzabilen, anu Jesus, magas na songsut Itzabilen, 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 Itzabunya kapikan hau, sa Mesias mapanyaku, dilitan gagak kita aku, Itzabilen, Itzabilen, tinin tu me
Woo! Woo! Zahu ano nakanta. Now, I do have to admit that when I used to teach at the University of Guam, you know, my students usually didn't like Idzabilen because we would practice it several times. You know, we would translate it. And then usually after singing it a few times, at least one of my students, Mumamego, would have fallen asleep. But, you know, I think what I love about these songs, especially so as somebody who is not Catholic, but loves the Chamorro language, what I love about them, though, is that many of them were translated into Chamorro about 100 years ago, a little less than 100 years ago or so. And because of that, these songs contain a portrait of the language at that time, and also because some of them were translated with the support of Catholic priests who were not Chamorro, but were supportive of Chamorros using more of their own language as opposed to using Spanish words in the translations of some of these songs, which many of them are common across Europe or in Spain. And so these are the Chamorro versions of these songs. And so that's why, you know, when you listen to these songs, and when you listen to the Novena, and we had a recent episode of Fanatsu with Senora Teresita Flores, who is a longtime Tetsa, a member of the Chamorro Language Commission, and who has taught a class on the Tetsa, sort of singing performing the prayers, but also understanding the history and the culture involved. And so, but just breaking down these songs is something that is a wonderful thing to do as well. If you have copies of the lyrics, translating them and then seeing the words that are used, because some of the words that you'll find in these prayers and these songs, we don't commonly use anymore. Some of them people only commonly use when they do sing these songs or perform these prayers. All right. So let's move on now. So the Delgado Brothers, love the Delgado Brothers. Love the Delgado Brothers so much. I mean, just their albums are so amazing. If you're not familiar with their music, go on to Fanatsu and you can hear a bunch of their stuff from three of their different vinyl albums that I've been able to collect. And so we're going to change things up. We're going to move to Johnny Sablan now. And so, Johnny Sablan is there are many fantastic, wonderful, influential Chamorro musicians. Johnny Sablan is probably the most influential, the sort of pioneering Chamorro musician, just because of his role. And when he was a very young man in his early 20s too, in terms of putting out the first ever full Chamorro record, Dalai Neni, and then following up with more than, I think, almost a dozen. I can't remember the exact number, but following it up with so many albums after that, from My Marianas, Hafade Todo Maulik, How Are You, My Chamorrans or My Chamorros, and then the 2 Christmas albums, but also Chamorro Country Western, Chamorro Country, Shame and Scandal. So many different albums. And then even also helping to sort of create recording opportunities for musicians on Guam by opening a studio, and then also creating the first Chamorro group album or all-star album with Casamiento in 1973. And so he has done so many amazing things. And so the next song that I want to share with you is one of those that I love to teach and to break down with students. Because when you look at the full song, and one thing that I should note is that many of the artists who perform this song record versions of it. They don't record all of the verses because it can be a little bit long. A lot of times they'll leave off the last 2 or 3 verses to keep it shorter. But it's a beautiful song. When you break down the lyrics, it has such wonderful imagery in terms of even thinking about sort of using imagery of the sky and the sun and the heavens in order to talk about that which is heavenly. It's such a beautiful song. Si Jose, then Si Maria. Here we go.
Si Jose, then Si Maria, esta buena man masapit. Otus na peregrino sugo magigil sa amin. To'y tutuhon natin ingog tayo hinekot na pinati. That kilonya itatson mo kay isagan mapagahes. Hafa na unting o pag-uiginep sa ganilangis. Sa'y nahotuos na hinyang niibulang ninaasing. Mamatang rodan humutong Diyos, tao-tao telon mami. I-Mesiyas, Hawi Kristo, hagas naman masanganin. O Diyos na peregrino, sugo magigil sa amin. Ano mo lumit sa tanmang tamatag-tag-ihaanin. Unang sulugin sa katani at daw mo bulagwakfing. Hago'y malag na at dahi maninila na kantin. Samutat sa guwasay ng winigi panagong mami. Guwas maneng hingi sanhitong megalok kwe imanyaki.
Love that song. Um, I love that song because even the words that are used, the imagery involved, it what I for me as somebody who didn't grow up speaking Chamorro but has learned it as an adult, learned it when I was at the University of Guam, learned it through speaking to my grandparents, in particular my grandmother. um for me the language has become something that's essential to my life. For my three children, I only speak to them in Chamorro. And my partner, Desiree, we have, what's it called? She is using more and more Chamorro every day. In the past 2 years, she has dedicated herself to learning Chamorro. And if I'm speaking Chamorro to her, she can just get everything I'm saying, and she can speak back for the most part. She journals in Chamorro regularly. She's written some poems in Chamorro. And so Chamorro is an important part of our existence, right? My kids write in Chamorro. They speak to me back in Chamorro. But one of the frustrating things, though, is people who are always trying to keep Chamorro in a very simplistic box. People are always saying, oh, Chamorro, tisinyo usa para adusya. As the late Sus Chamorro, Jesus Chatfra said, Chamorros say, oh, tisinyo usa y lenguajita para moderno na cosas. You can't use our language for modern things. The language is just for the ranch. It's just for the church. The language is puri menagofad zeni nenatselik. It's just for humor. It's just for fun, right? But what I love about the Chamoru Christmas songs, though, like Si Jose and Si Maria, is that it shows that you can use the language for so much more. Si Jose and Si Maria talks about metaphysical concepts. It talks about sort of the Jesus becoming flesh and becoming, coming from being a god to becoming human. It talks about sort of the movements of the heavens, referring to Jesus sort of as referring to Jesus through metaphor as the sun. It has all of these different elements to it that show that the language doesn't have to just be this simple thing where we're always keeping it really small, right? It can be expansive and it can grow. So that's one thing that I love about these is when you really, it's one thing to just sing it, to say it, but if you ever get a chance to sit down and translate them and break them down, especially as you're learning Chamorro, it's a rewarding experience because it shows that the language will only be as small as we allow it to be. That if we always keep it in that box, then that's where it'll stay. But if we find ways to push beyond that box, to use Chamorro for more and more things, right? Not to push its own boundaries, to keep it expanding and evolving, well, then the language will grow, right? The language will grow. And so I love that one. I love that song. Okay, so let's do another Johnny Sablan song. Johnny Sablan, I know he is such a pioneer for music. So many things that he sort of accomplished in terms of what he has done in terms of building up the infrastructure for Chamorro music. And so let's do another one from Chamoru Christmas, the double album. Here we go. And so next we're going to get to another one that you might be familiar with, Puengin Zuus, which is of course the Chamorro version of Silent Night. So Nengon Ratu, Nita Ekong Kestipago.
Puengin Zeus, Puengin Jesus, Umatuna si Zeus, Zaufatu gitau kasihan. Ihatat dengan nafas nihan, Gigi guhat zan si Zeus. sehat si Jesus. Wengin Zeus, wengin Jesus, dalai loque sen mampus, ano kirai sihan, hegi etsonyanihan, Zati zani hasidus, Zati zani hasi Jesus. Wengin Zeus, wengin Jesus, Mafanyo si Jesus, lautat kay gigi esonanya, na si Jose hadzan si nananya, mampus pineplenzus, mampus pineplenzus.
Wengin Zeus, Zahua now. Ay, bonito. Mengov bonito estina kanta siya hunggan. And so, if you have any memories or any sort of feelings of nostalgia, or even just sort of expressions of what these songs make you feel, even if you're somebody who did not grow up with them, feel free to comment into the chat, put in the comments, and then I can read some of what you're feeling or experiencing, right? And I really do want to ask people, Spencer, does your family sing these songs? Does your family do the novena? Do they make a belen? And if you do these things, how much is the Chamorro language a part of it, right? Because I know that many families still do novenas, lesodzus, and una clase in Tanaytay, but I hear more and more that English is the dominant language, right? Because the younger generation cannot understand the Chamorro. But so what is your experience, right? Because I always encourage people, as somebody who doesn't do the novena, but I did do a night of my girlfriend's family's novena last year in Chamorro, and then I was very proud of her because she also read for another night, and she did it in Chamorro too, even though reading the sort of the traditional church Chamorro inspired by the Spanish orthography can be difficult at times for people that are used to the way most Chamorro is. Language is a part of it, because we wonder, why is the language dying, right? But part of the reason why the language is dying is because in these spaces in which different generations interact and spend time together, English is what is used. And I know that people say, well, you have to communicate, your grandkids don't understand Chamorro. But the same also is true that if you don't give them any Chamorro, how do you expect them to ever understand Chamorro? And if you don't at least give them some Chamorro, give them some sense of it, then what are you giving them? What are you passing on? We've listened to 2 songs from Johnny Sablan's albums, and I always like to tell this part of his story, is that Johnny Sablan was a talented musician and singer from a young age. He was in talent shows on Guam. He was in talent shows in the States. He recorded some songs, some of which went onto the charts in the States. He performed at concerts and at venues while in California. But when he reached a certain age and he was attending college in California, he was asked to share his culture, share songs from his culture. And even though he had been singing for most of his life up to that point, he didn't know Chamorro songs came from that he was from, the island that he was from. And so part of it is that if you are Chamorro though, but if the generation before you doesn't give you anything to give it texture, to give it substance, to give it any meaning, right? If they say the only thing that you get is sort of a sticker for your car, a shirt that says, what's it called? That says Chamorro, a tattoo, right? That's it. It's not much to go on. And so, I always say if you have these sort of, I told my language students for this past year, if you're gathering with your family and if you've never sang a Chamorro song ever before for your Christmas gatherings, whether it's in Vermont, whether it's in Texas, whether it's in Guam, wherever it is, why don't you take this opportunity this time to give everybody the lyrics for one Chamorro song and then just practice singing it and then sing it together when you're there. And hopefully it's a positive experience. And then next year, you can add a second song, right? You could always start off with Dandani Panderetas. That's an easy song, right? Easy to get into. It's fun. Even young people like singing Dandani Panderetas because you can get tambourines, or you can just get bells, or you can just kind of hit the wall, whatever you can just to celebrate. But bring Chamorro into your multi-generational gatherings, even in small ways. Just find ways to bring it in, to naturalize it as part of the way that the grandparents interact with the grandchildren and so on. Okay, so we're going to listen to two more songs. And so here is another one from Johnny Sablan. This is from the other album, Chamorro, Christmas Songs and Carols. So Nangon Ratu, here we go. We've got two short songs, Gatbun Patgun and Gihom Hom Nasaga.
Gatbun Patgun
All right, Tatsagi Estitalo. All right, go ahead. Technical na manapot dispensado.
Gatbun Patgun Magas Patgun Dikikir Niño Jesus Atanam todos na inadorahal Komoy magahet na lahen Zeus Infingo todos na pinatomo Para un libre pamaguon mo Adon na patgun regalon mami I corazon tani ante mami Gihom hom na saga gifioni gagaw Nagagi Cristo ira Israel And Marto Pastores Tifi Igre Flores Adoras Itos Filids and Belen Jesus Linagita Pastor Israel My mommy Tus Emmanuel Tuos Mito Thy Guidi Bidrentensis San Jose Tautawi Anok Nyamnya My God is not tuos Mito great Jesus see that my son Israel.
Biba. Biba, biba. Ay, bonito este nakantasyo. Hungan, hungan. I wanted to share some comments that we've gotten from people that are viewing. And so first off, one from Senora Lillian Cruz. Jesus Masi. Senora Lillian is a longtime supporter and patron of Fanatsu, always tunes in and always shows her support. Jesus Masi, Senora. And so Senora Lillian says, I did not grow up hearing these songs, but I love to hear the Chamorro. I appreciate them now. Again, and si Diyos masi purisinangan mo, Senora. It's such an important message, right? That even if you did not grow up with the Chamorro language, you can always find your way back to it, right? Just it's not something sort of that always has to be lost to you. The overwhelming majority, more than 80% of Chamorros cannot speak their native language. And it does not have to remain like that. The only thing that can prevent you from learning your language, right, is you not trying to learn it. And you don't need to know every single word, right? Learning is a journey, right? It's not something that happens overnight. It's not something that happens 100%. The most important thing that I tell people is to start the process of learning. And it can start with some songs, it can start with some words, but begin the process. I wanted to share also, Senor Tommy Leon Guerrero Benavente, Hafade Senor, he says, grew up participating in these seasonal songs during our novenas, treasured memories for sure. Sidus Masi, Senor, Sidus Masi, and then we have Kevin Camacho, Hafade, another Fanatsu patron, Sidus Masi Tsatlun. He says, the metaphysical concepts translate clearly in our native tongue. Language is dynamic and its utility is only as effective as we use it daily. Magahit Setlu. Again, we really, really need to remind ourselves about that. Is that, the Chamorro language does not need to die. A language only dies when people stop using it and when people stop teaching it. Right. And so if we wanted to save the Chamorro language, there's still tens of thousands of Chamorros who can speak the language. If at least one of each of their grandchildren could speak Chamorro, the language would survive for several more generations. But the problem, though, is that if you speak Chamorro, chances are good you speak it to those who are your same age, and you probably spoke it to those who are older than you. But there's a very small chance that you used it regularly with those who are younger than you. And that was what happened after World War II, was that Chamorros stopped speaking it to those younger than them in a regular, concerted, collective way. Some people learned it, right? So some people today, my parents spoke to me in Chamorro. That's why I learned it. I picked it up from my cousins. I learned it here or there, wherever. But what happens after World War II is that those people are less and less and less over time. And what we see today is that there are lots and lots of people who would like to speak Chamorro, but it's already declining. In many of their families, it's already being silenced. And so, when I was growing up, everybody basically had Chamorro. If you were Chamorro, your grandparents could speak Chamorro, and your parents, there was a good chance they could speak Chamorro. Now you have young people who have grandparents. Even if they have 4 Chamorro grandparents, there's a good chance that none of them may speak Chamorro, at least not fluently, and that their parents, none of them will speak Chamorro, right? So this is part of the problem, right? Is that it's once the language gets stressed and strained and it starts to become marginalized, it's hard to get it healthy again. But all it takes is for, if you have parents who speak Chamorro and you have kids that you want to speak Chamorro, do whatever you can to get your parents to speak to your children in Chamorro, to reinforce the language, to give them that gift. And always remember that learning languages is not something that it just happens like that, like you download it like an app, right? It is a process. And so nowadays people unfortunately emphasize this idea that, oh, lo tima compraprendizo estiman hoben. The young people, they don't understand me when I'm speaking Chamorro. But they will if you keep speaking Chamorro to them. If you speak enough Chamorro to them and you keep it up, then they will learn some Chamorro. But if you do it like sometimes I always hear the story where somebody says, oh yeah, I spoke to my grandkids once and they didn't understand me. Pues pumaradzo. It's like, well, why did you stop? Keep going, right? Keep going. Support this year. this year. And so the last song that we're going to listen to, though, is part of the importance for us not to think of language in that static, stuck way, right? But for us to also think about adapting and expanding, right? And so most of the Chamorro Christmas songs that are out there are, of course, Catholic in origin, but there is a small number of Chamorro Christmas songs which are other English songs which have been translated into Chamorro, right? I always love to teach my students Jingle Bell Rock in Chamorro, the version that was translated by the late Joe Peredo, a longtime Chamorro teacher and activist, it's so funny because for these types of songs, because a lot of these songs deal with snow and things and imagery and culture, which is foreign to Guam, at least foreign directly to Guam. And so a lot of times you have to change, you have to change it up to make it fit. And so I love Jingle Bell Rock in Chamorro because it's all about sort of barbecuing on the beach, all about barbecuing on the beach and stuff like that. But for the last song, we're once again going to Johnny Sablan and his Christmas songs and carols. And this is a song that many of you may know. This is one of the few sort of quote unquote local Chamorro Christmas songs I knew growing up. It is, of course, Jingle Bells, Coconut Shells, or Jungle Bells, Coconut Shells. Nihite kungok.
Here we are on Guam, without a hope for snow, and through the swaying palms, a typhoon sure can blow. Santa surely knows what the tropics will allow. Instead of using 8 reindeer, he'll use a carabao. Jingle bells, coconut shells, sticker buds all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a two-wheel carabao sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, coconut shells, sticker buds all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a two-wheel carabao sleigh. Although it's December, it feels just like July. The season spirit grows each day, 'cause everyone is wearing a lei. And when the tropic sun lights up all the Christmas trees, you can feel it in the air that Christmas time is here. Jingle bells, coconut shells, sticker buds all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a two-wheel carabao sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, coconut shells, sticker buds all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a two-wheel carabao sleigh. Jingle bells, coconut shells, sticker buds all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a two-wheel carabao sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, coconut shells, sticker buds all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a two-wheel carabao sleigh. Jingle bells, coconut shells, sticker buds all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a two-wheel carabao sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, coconut shells, sticker buds all the way.
Ooh. Jingle bells, coconut shells, stickerbirds all the way. Oh, all right. Zazahu Hadzuna Kanta. I like that song too. Hungan. And so I hope you have found this episode interesting. Esti na semana para te celebra este Pascua Noche Buena. We're celebrating Christmas this week, right? And so I thought that this would be a nice way to get into the Christmas spirit with some Chamorro music, some Chamorro Christmas music. And so I hope that some of you have found it helpful, whether you are familiar with these songs. And it was nice to sort of, as some of you mentioned, it's nice to return to them and to hear them again. But for those of you who haven't, who did not grow up with this, I hope it was a nice introduction to it. But wherever you are, whether you're in the Marianas or whether you are Kisanlago or whether, even if you're on the International Space Station, if you have a gathering of Chamorros or some Chamorros and some non-Chamorros, but wherever you are, bring the Chamorro language into your celebration somehow. If you feel like you can't do the novena, the full 9 days, it's kind of late to be starting now, by the way, if you're going to start your novena now. You could always do the compressed 9 days into one night, which I'm sure everyone would love. But, but maybe you're just going to do a Belen, set up a Belen, and then sing a Chamorro Christmas song around it. Whatever you're doing, if you're going to gather, just teach everybody one Chamorro song, though. But however you can find a way to do it, put favor, sogwiha, because just remember that if we want language, if we want culture, if we want identity to persist and to thrive, then we cannot abdicate the responsibility for it. We can't sort of just say, oh, it's all just disappearing and dying, and missing the role that we can play in preventing that, even in small ways, right? And so it's like what I always tell people, if we are not going to bring Chamorro into our celebrations and pass it on to the next generation, who else is going to do it for us, right? We wish that Santa Claus would come down the chimney, although Tad's chimney gets a guahan, I don't know. Maybe he'll squeeze through the aircon vent and then he'll bring, Chamorro language resources for Todri Famagun. Yeah, we can hope for that. But it's much better if you just take the small and simple steps to bring a little bit of Chamorro into your life and to make sure that that sharing happens across generations, not just within one generation, but that it is parents, it is mañana, parimanhoben, parifamagun. All right. Si dus masi no hamzu todos ni umeegat zan umeekung pago esti I finakpu esti na especial na episode Fanatsu pur esti na champun Pascua Noche Buena. That is it for today's episode of Fanatsu. Adios. Este ki otro semana. Si dus masi talum.